This is the new 2023 Volvo S60 Recharge Black Edition, and it's a plug-in hybrid version of Volvo's S60 sedan. It's also surprisingly sporty. This has 455 horsepower, and that makes this the most powerful Volvo ever made. Today, I'm going to review it and show you some of its quirks and features. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction website for cool cars from the modern era with free listings. You can list your cool car for free and auction it on Cars and Bids. And we've had some fantastic sales recently, including this wonderful Mercedes E63 AMG wagon, which sold for just under $41,000. This amazing FD Mazda RX-7, which sold for just under $34,000. And this great Dodge Durango SRT Hellcat, which brought $80,000. If you're looking to buy or sell a cool enthusiast car from the modern era, Cars and Bids is the place to do it, with daily auctions, free listings, and great selection. Check it out at carsandbids.com. All right, time for the quirks and features of the Volvo S60 Recharge Black Edition. Now, I have already reviewed a Volvo S60 from this generation. This is a new model, but really it's just a facelift of the existing S60. I've already reviewed that, a full review, which I will link below. So in today's video, I'm just gonna go over the new stuff and some of the more interesting quirks and features, just the highlights. And the biggest highlight is undoubtedly the powertrain. Up front, you have a turbo 4-cylinder that makes about 310 horsepower. And then in back, you have an electric motor that makes about 145 horsepower. The result is a combined 455 horsepower. Like I said, that makes this the most powerful Volvo ever made. It also gives this car about 525 pound-feet of torque, which is a pretty healthy figure, and standard all-wheel drive, since you got a motor up front and a motor in back. Now, this is a big upgrade over last year's plug-in S60, which had a measly 400 horsepower. I joke a little bit, but it actually is a big upgrade, particularly in the electric motor. The prior S60 plug-in would only do 22 miles of pure electric range, and the electric motor had only 87 horsepower. So you couldn't really use the electric range that much, and if you did, you didn't have all that much power. This car, the electric motor has 145 horsepower, like I said, and the range is about 40 miles. Still not a huge amount, but far more useful than the about 20 miles from before. That makes this a viable, like, electric mode only daily driver, gasoline engine for longer trips, which obviously means better efficiency, better electric range. Now, the other important thing to keep in mind with the S60 Recharge is pricing. These start around $52,000 with shipping, which is about $10,000 more than the gasoline version equivalent of the S60. But this car qualifies for the $7,500 federal EV tax rebate because it's built in the United States and it fits under the price cap for that rebate. So when you factor in the rebate, if you qualify, this car ends up only being about $2,500 more expensive than the gas-powered S60, and it has more power and electric capabilities, which makes it kind of a no-brainer to buy over the gas model. Now, aside from the powertrain, there aren't really that many other important revisions to the facelifted S60 Recharge, but the biggest one is in the infotainment system, where Volvo has added Google-based technology to the infotainment. And that means you now have Google Assistant and you have Google Maps, as you can see. So the map screen isn't like some navigation map. Instead, it's actual Google Maps like you'd have on your phone on an app built into the infotainment screen, which is nice, and it helps modernize this infotainment system. Although I must say, aside from those Google additions, this infotainment system is starting to feel kind of old. Volvo's been using this system for a while. The screen is relatively small compared to rivals, and the functionality isn't quite as good. For instance, the backup camera screen is small. The home screen doesn't give you as much information as you get on some rival models with larger screens. And of course, it incorporates your climate controls, which not everybody loves. This technology is decent, and the Google edition helps, helps, but still not my favorite infotainment system in the car industry. But moving on from the new things in the S60 Recharge to a few interesting quirks. One of them is definitely the shifter in this car, which is this crystal shifter manufactured by Aurifours, and it has a little image of, I think that's an otter, which I think is the Aurifours logo. You don't really see a lot of crystal car crossover, but here you are, classing up the interior in the S60. Also in this area, kind of cool, is the start-stop button. To turn this car on, you twist this little switch to the right, and that starts the engine, and to turn it off, you do the same thing, twist to the right to stop it, and it just is cool. It feels like sticking a key in and twisting it in the old school. It's a lot better than a simple, boring button. Also interesting and quirky in here, you have this little piece coming out from the windshield. You might wonder, what exactly is this? It allows you to stick like a parking ticket or a parking validation on the inside of the windshield, so a parking ticket enforcement person can see that it's there, instead of sticking it on your dashboard, a little built-in piece to the car that makes life a little bit easier. Unfortunately, life is a little bit harder in the back seat, and that's because of this big hump that takes up the entire middle and the floor in the back seat. Not exactly great for a middle passenger. There is a middle seat back here, but I don't know how you would feasibly sit with this giant hump in the floor. Now, a lot of electric cars don't have any hump in their floor, front or rear, but I guess because this is a plug-in hybrid, it still has a gas engine and an electric engine, they have to talk to each other. They do that through the middle here, and it really takes away rear seat legroom in the center. But other than that, rear seat legroom is pretty good. Decent size space for mid-size sedan, not really all that surprising, and you got a couple nice features back here like heated rear seats and a charge port, which of course adds some convenience. As for cargo space in this car, well, it's pretty much exactly what you'd expect. Mid-size sedan, it has a trunk. This is that trunk. There's nothing particularly exciting or unusual about it. But one other quirk worth mentioning is under the hood. A lot of cars, you open up the hood and you see a big metal engine block. Here, it's foam. You push on it and it's like a foam piece that actually pushes down. Apparently that's for pedestrian safety. If you hit someone with your S60, instead of them bouncing off the metal engine and hurting themselves, this adds a little bit more safety since foam compresses more and it won't hurt as much. It's kind of a good idea. And finally, last thing worth covering here is the Black Edition, because I mentioned earlier that this S60 is the Black Edition. So what do you get with the Black Edition? Well, as you can imagine, it's just a few cosmetic things, doesn't really mean all that much, but it has a few upgrades. For one thing, you can only get it in white or black. This is white. There are also a few black trim pieces on the outside. You can see black mirror caps here. You also have black painted wheels. Of course, that's very hot right now. You have black badging in back, S60 and Volvo, it's all black. And maybe most importantly, most interestingly, even the Volvo logo up front has been completely blacked out. So you don't even really see like the design of the Volvo logo, but that's what you get with the Black Edition. All right, driving the S60 Recharge Black Edition. The name is a little ridiculous, but the car is nice enough. You know, it's interesting, it's a sedan. There's not a lot of people out there actively searching for these types of cars. Plug-in hybrids are not as popular as I expected they would be. Most people seem to want either a traditional gas car or an electric car. And sedans are just generally not all that popular, as everyone knows, and so it's kind of unusual to see a plug-in hybrid sedan being facelifted and upgraded and improved in the modern era. But Volvo is still at least relatively committed to cars. They have the S60 and then the V90 and the V60, so there's some cars in the Volvo lineup. So let's talk Recharge. You know, I mentioned earlier this is the most powerful Volvo of all time, which sounds pretty impressive, but the truth is this car doesn't feel quite as sporty as that might make it seem. I'm not sure what the 0 to 60 time is, but I'll tell you one interesting thing. It doesn't have any drive modes. There's no like sport mode. Every other car that I get into that is powerful has a sport mode that tightens up the throttle and makes you feel like you're doing more. That's not really the goal here. This car has power like a lot of electric vehicles and plug-in vehicles do, but it's not like incredibly performance-y and sporty. There's not a lot of effort paid to make the suspension feel amazing, to throw the car around, etc., etc. And so driving this car like through, you know, severe corners. I had this car on a nice back road that I really enjoy, and it's fine, but it doesn't drive like the most powerful of anything ever type of car. Like, it drives fine, but I wouldn't expect it would be a performance car. But then you accelerate, as I'm doing right now, and it has some performance. But really, I think it's sort of like Tesla in some senses, in that it really is like a straight line performance type car, and the rest of the stuff is not really necessarily all there, nor is it really intended to be. I don't think Volvo is marketing this as like a crazy performance sedan BMW M5 competitor. But from an acceleration standpoint, it's pretty impressive, and so that's kind of a nice addition to a luxury car. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the technology in this car is so-so. I like the addition of the Google stuff. It helps integrate into things you're already using, and it's more familiar to you, and there's a lot of benefits to it. But this infotainment system is not the very best. This center gauge cluster screen is also, it's fine, it's nice. It does have the map in the center and all the information that you'd need on the sides. It's good enough, but not quite as configurable, not quite as do-yourself full screen, you know, change it to however you want, as what you get in some rivals. Now, on the road, this car drives pretty well. I guess one benefit of it not being like a corner carving sports car is that the suspension is tuned pretty calmly. It's nice. I wouldn't say that it's floaty at all. It feels like it has a good weight to it. It's nice and planted, nice and sure-footed, and sitting in here is nice too. You got high-quality seats, good, comfortable feel in this car. A lot like Volvos kind of always have been. The difference being that more and more shoppers are gravitating now towards SUVs and crossovers, and so this car's positioning, in my mind, is a little bit in jeopardy. I'm not really sure how many people are actively pursuing cars like this. But overall, I would say there's a lot to like about this car. The technology is decent, the Google integration is nice. You have a nice style, like all Volvos. It just looks great. So many modern Volvos are just some of the best looking cars in their segments. This car checks a lot of boxes for people who are into a plug-in hybrid sedan. I'm just not entirely sure how many people are left looking for such a vehicle. And so that's the new 2023 Volvo S60 Recharge Black Edition, the plug-in hybrid high-performance version of Volvo's S60 sedan. This car has a lot of good things going for it. It has decent technology, great performance, good driver assist, it's efficient, it looks nice, but I suspect it's not really going to be all that popular. At the end of the day, the market has largely moved on to SUVs and crossovers, but thankfully, Volvo has a bunch of those too. Anyway, now it's time to give the S60 Recharge a DOUGSCORE. And the DOUGSCORE is here, 56 out of 100, which places the S60 Recharge here against rivals, basically, well, last. Truthfully, this is a weird car, a plug-in hybrid in an age where everyone is making the leap to electric, a sedan in an age when everyone wants an SUV, and a powerful, quick car that's not all that sporty. Frankly, if I was interested in a car like this, I'd go full electric and get a Polestar 2. But for a small sliver of people, the S60 Recharge will likely check their boxes.